and students. Mr. Koblenz here, coming to you with lesson 10.1. So we're starting a new chapter, chapter 10, which is going to be on time and measurement and things like that. Okay. So we're going to do as many of the lessons as we can. We might not be able to do all of them, especially with the measurement, but we'll see what we can do. But the first 3 lessons we're going to do this week, starting with lesson 10.1. So let's get right into this video. Okay, so we are going with lesson 10.1 here. The title of lesson 10.1 is Time to the Minute. So we are learning to tell time. You should have learned how to tell time in 2nd grade to 5-minute intervals and half hours and quarter hours and things like that. You should be familiar with that, but we're going right into time to the minute. Okay, our essential question is, how can you tell time to the nearest minute? So let me show you. It says that Groundhog Day is February 2nd. People say that if a groundhog can see its shadow on that morning, winter will last another 6 weeks. The clock shows the time when the groundhog saw its shadow. What time was it? Okay, so we're going to take a look at this clock right here. All right, and our questions say, look at the time on this clock face. What does the hour hand tell you? What does the minute hand tell you? Now, the first thing we want to remember is which one is the hour hand and which one is the minute hand. Okay, so remember the hour always comes first, minutes come second when telling time, and the hour hand is the short hand. The minute hand is the long hand. Okay, so the hour hand tells us, okay, that right here, as we can see, the hour hand is the short hand. It's right in between the 8 and the 7. It tells us that is the 7th hour of the day. Okay? So, 7th hour. Okay? And what does the minute hand tell us? Okay? The minute hand tells us how many minutes have gone by during that hour. Okay? So, remember, when we're counting minutes, we can count by 5 for each number that is on the clock. So if I'm starting at 12, which is where we always want to start, 12 is considered 0 minutes of that hour. We're going to count by 5. So here I go. 5, 10, 15. Here's 20. We're going to fill in this blank right here. Okay, and we're going to go to 25. Fill in this blank as 25. We're going to go to 30. And we're going to go to 35. Okay, and we're going to write all of those in. So right now, I know that the minute hand is telling me that there's 35 minutes in this hour. It says in 1 minute, the minute hand moves from one mark to the next on the clock. It takes 5 minutes for the minute hand to move from the one number to the next on the clock. So this first thing right here says in 1 minute, the minute hand moves from one mark to the next on a clock. So as you can see, it's kind of small, but as you can see, there are tiny little marks on the clock. And I'm showing you with my pointer here, okay? There are these tiny little marks. Each little mark stands for 1 minute. So we can count by ones for those little marks. Okay? You can count on by 5s to tell the time to 5 minutes. Count 0 at the 12. So we've already done this. We're filling this in with the numbers we already used here. So 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, and 35. Okay? So the groundhog saw its shadow, and we figured out this minute hand stopped at the 7. That's 35. So we write that here as 7:35. We can also read it as 7. I made a mistake there. Let me go back 1 second. Okay, we want to write that word 35. Or we can write it as 35 minutes after the hour, which is 7. Okay? So, that was how we told time. We used the hour hand in between the 7 and the 8, which means it's the 7th hour. It's not to the 8 yet. And we used the minute hand on the 7 and counted by 5s to get to that total. So it is 7:35. On to the next page. Look at the time on this clock face. What does the hour hand tell us? Okay. So we're looking at the hour hand. It's right here in between the 1 and the 2, which means it is the first hour, or 1 hour into the day, or on the time on the clock. Let me say that in a better way. So we'll say it this way. First hour. You can fix that on your paper. Okay, what does the minute hand tell us? Well, the minute hand, okay, again, tells us how many minutes there are, and we want to count by 5s until we get close to that minute hand. Now, notice our minute hand is in between the 5 and the 4. So we're going to have to get down to the 4, and then count those little tick marks by 1s. Because we can't jump from the 4 to the 5 because it's not at the 5 yet. So let's count by 5s first till we get to the 4, and then we want to count the tick marks. Okay, so 5, 10, 15, 20, which is already written here for us. Now, we want to go one at a time here. So we're going to go 1 minute, which would make it 21, because we were just at 20. Then we have 22, which is already in there for us. And then we have 23. That's going to tell us 23 minutes. First hour, 23 minutes in. We're going to write that as 1:23. We can also write it as 23 minutes after 1, where I'm getting this, okay? And we can also write it as 1 and the number 23. Okay, let's go ahead and do the second one. Okay? So this is going to switch it up on us a little bit. What we know is that the hour hand here is in between the 2 and the 3. So we know it's the second hour because it's in between the 2 and the 3. It's not 2 to 3 yet, right? Okay? Now, they're going to do something a little tricky here. Okay? Instead of going forward and counting all the way over to here, they're going to go backwards. Okay? So we're counting back this time, but we're counting forward. It's weird. Okay, we're going on the clock backwards, but we're counting by 5 still because each number, remember, is 5 minutes. Okay? So 5, 10, 15, and then notice that my minute hand is not to the 8, so I can't go all the way to the 8 and say 20. We're going to count by 1. So we have 16, 15, 16, and then 17. What does the minute hand tell us? It tells us it's 17 minutes. But it doesn't tell us 17 minutes after 2 o'clock. It tells us 17 minutes before my hour hand gets to where? To the next number, to 3. Okay? How did they get 2:43? That's interesting. Okay? How did they get 2:43? You're probably wondering. Because this is 17, right? So remember that we counted backwards instead of forwards. If we would have counted forwards, we would have counted 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 41, 42, 43. See that? That's how they got 43. But also remember there are 60 minutes in an hour minus the 17 that we counted backwards would give us, we regroup, an answer of 10 minus 7 is 3 and 5 minus 1 is 4. 43. It is 2:43. We could also say, though, that it's 17 minutes before 3. Or it's 2:43. This is a little confusing, and it probably will confuse you a lot. I want you to focus on doing it this way, guys. I want you to focus on this, counting forward. Okay? That will be important. But there will be some problems, possibly like this. So we'll look into that as we get into the next page. All right, so number 1. How would you use counting in the minute hand to find the time shown on the clock? Write the time. So how would we use counting? What are we going to count by as we go from 12 to 1, to 2, to 3, to 4, and 5? Now, it's really hard for me to tell, but I think that this minute hand is not to the 5 yet. So we wouldn't count this last 5. We would count by what when we get to the 4? Hopefully you're thinking, Mr. Collins, we would count by ones. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? So what are we going to count by from each number? We're going to count by 5. So 5, 10, 15, 20. And then remember, we counted 4 here, so that would make it 21, 22, 23, 24. Sorry, it's really hard to fit this in here, guys. But if that minute hand is just before the 5, that's going to be 24 minutes. Because remember, on the 5 would be 25, but it's not quite there. Okay? So I noticed that my hour hand is in between the 1 and the 2, so that makes this 1:24. Okay? Number 2, 3, and 4. Write the time. Write one way you can read the time. Okay? So what we're going to do here is we're going to write the time 2 ways. That's all I want you to do. Okay? So for number 2, I'm noticing that my hour hand is almost to the 3. And I know it's not at the 3 yet, because if it was at the 3, then my minute hand would have to be on the 12, and it's not. Okay? So I know it's really close to the 3, but it's not there yet because my minute hand is not to the 12 yet. Okay? This is a good one where we would want to count backwards, guys. Okay? So I know it's 2 something because my hour hand is not to 3 yet. Okay? So what I would do is I would count backwards. This is a really good one to count backwards because when our minute hand gets really close to this side, it's good to count backwards. So here I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's really hard to see, and it's really hard for me to draw on here, but if you are careful on your paper, you will see that it's 4 spaces back. Okay? So that does not mean it's 2:04 because we went backwards. So remember, 60 minutes in an hour minus 4 minutes is going to give me, again, regrouping. We're going to have to do it like every time. Okay? 10 minus 4 is 6. 5 minus 0 is 5. So it's going to be 256. And another way we can write this is in words, 256. Or we could also write that it's 4 minutes till 3. Okay? Look at number 3. All right, number 3 says, write one way you can read the time. Okay, so again, we're looking at our hour hand first. Our hour hand is in between the 6 and the 7, so I have 6 something. And my minute hand is in between the 3 and the 4, so I'm going to count by 5s till I get to the 3. 5, 10, 15. And I'm going to count by 1s until I get to my minute hand. So I'm going to notice here that it's 16, 17. So the time is 6:17, and you can write that in words. 6, 7, 8. All right, here we have 10:45. All right, so we can write that in words. 10:45. And another way to say 10:45 that I'm going to teach you right now is that when we have 10:45, it's been 45 minutes. That means we have 15 more minutes until the next hour when we get to 45. Okay? So we could just call this 15 minutes till what would be the next hour after 10? Okay? That's what we want to think. So it would be 11. Okay. So this is where I'm going to go ahead and assign some work here. This is going to be a little bit difficult. You definitely want to probably get some help from a parent with this, but just remember that when we count by the numbers, we're going by fives, and when we count by the little dashes, we're going by ones. Okay. So be very careful with that. So what I'd like you to do is I would like you to try for this work, is I would like you to try 6. I'd like you to try 7. I'd like you to also do number 8, 9, and 10. We're going to do 6 through 10. You can skip 5, you can skip 11, and you can do 6 through 10. Quickly explain, for number 6, you're going to write the time. So notice where the hour hand is, notice where the minute hand is. Count carefully forward, or you could try going backwards. It's a little more tricky, but you could try backwards. But I would suggest going forwards, counting by fives until you get over here to where this minute hand is, stopping at the 9, and then counting by ones. Okay? For number 7, again, I would definitely suggest figuring out where the hour hand is first, writing that down, and then counting by fives until you get to the 2 here, and notice it's right on the 2, so you don't have to count by ones for this one. Okay? Please try to write the time in 2 ways. So I would write it with numbers, and then I would also appreciate if you would write it on the second line in words. Okay? Number 8, 9, and 10, they are asking you to write the time another way. So you can write this in numbers, or you can write this in words, just another way, not exactly as it says here. So 35 minutes after 5, 11 minutes before 6. This one's going to be tricky because if you're writing it in numbers, you're not going to use 6 because it's 11 minutes before 6. So this is where one of those ones where you might want to subtract how many minutes it is before 6 and think about what hour comes before 6. Number 10 is 22 minutes after 11. So this is one where you want to think about it. And it's helpful maybe, on your paper to draw a clock of this. So 35 minutes after 5, right? So draw your numbers on the clock, or if you have a clock at home and you can move the hands to show it, that's a good practice too. Okay? But good luck with numbers 6 through 10. Let me know if you have any questions, any way I can help. This has been quite a long video, so do your very best. Answer those 5 questions, and let me know if you need something. But other than that, it's Mr. Koblenz out, and have a great day. I miss you all.